Nestled within a picturesque valley, the neighborhood was the kind of place where children played on well-manicured lawns and neighbors exchanged pleasantries over white picket fences. Every home was a reflection of its owner, a patchwork of styles from charming bungalows to modern builds, all unified by the strict guidelines set forth by the Homeowners Association, HOA. The HOA prided itself on maintaining harmony and aesthetic appeal, but it had become increasingly authoritarian over the years. Meetings were held regularly in the community center, where a handful of vocal members wielded excessive power. Their fervor for order verged on obsession, creating an atmosphere that felt stifling to many residents. They laid down rules governing everything from lawn ornamentation to mailbox placement, punishing violations with fines and threats of court appearances. While this usually resulted in compliance, over time, it also bred resentment among some residents who felt chafed under the weight of draconian regulations. Then there were the self-appointed enforcers of these bylaws, an informal faction of particularly passionate residents who took it upon themselves to patrol the streets like vigilantes. Clad in matching polo shirts emblazoned with "Neighborhood Watch," they roamed the community on weekend afternoons, armed with clipboards and an air of authority that often exceeded that granted to them by the HOA itself. On one hand, they served as watchdogs, but on the other, their overzealousness ran the risk of turning harmless interactions into confrontations. Tension simmered beneath the surface as stories began to circulate about various encounters leading to exaggerated disputes, often just over trivial issues. Every encounter held a blend of comedy and exasperation, like when Mr. Thompson was reported for an unregistered garden gnome or when Mrs. Jenkins faced scrutiny for her rebellious pink flamingos. Within this context of an increasingly strange neighborhood dynamic lay a deeper story waiting to unravel. Little did these self-styled enforcers know that they had unknowingly targeted someone far more capable than they appeared, someone with secrets that could twist their mundane world into chaos. It was into this quirky setting that my wife would soon find herself entangled, her dual life casting an unexpected shadow over what seemed like just another day in our tight-knit community. Amid the quaint charm of our neighborhood, my wife, Rachel, appeared to be just another devoted resident, blending seamlessly with the community's fabric. A friendly smile graced her face as she chatted with neighbors while walking our golden retriever, Max. She could effortlessly discuss gardening tips with Mrs. Thompson or exchange recipes with the local bakers at the weekend market. Yet beneath that warm exterior lay a life brimming with complexity and intrigue. She was a CIA agent, skilled in covert operations and strategic thinking. Rachel's journey to this remarkable vocation began far from our tranquil suburban setting. Growing up in a bustling city, she had always shown an aptitude for languages and problem-solving. After excelling at university, she was recruited by the CIA due to her aptitude for analysis and her ability to remain calm under pressure. Her training involved a rigorous curriculum of intelligence analysis, physical fitness, and specialized courses in espionage tactics. While other agents might have struggled to balance their work with personal lives, Rachel had learned the art of compartmentalization early on, allowing her to maintain an outwardly ordinary life while harboring extraordinary skills. Her interior design choices reflected this dual existence. Our home was a cozy haven with inviting decor, concealing a state-of-the-art security system behind unassuming walls. Every detail seemed carefully curated, not just to impress visitors or neighbors but also as part of her instinctive preparation for any unforeseen circumstance. From her seemingly benign flower arrangements to a carefully hidden safe containing sensitive materials, Rachel always anticipated that mundane life could be disrupted without warning. As tensions began to rise in the neighborhood due to the increasingly overzealous HOA enforcers, Rachel's instincts kicked into high gear. She sensed that further confrontations were inevitable, and while most residents felt uncomfortable discussing these developments, it sparked a sense of purpose within her. Despite the threats posed by those self-appointed neighborhood watchmen, she was ready to navigate this perilous territory not only as a neighbor but as someone capable of outsmarting even the most ardent wannabe authorities. Underneath her casual demeanor lay agility born from years of training, and as the stakes grew higher among our eccentric community members, I knew my wife was not just an ordinary resident, she was an extraordinary force ready to take on any challenge that came her way. The situation escalated one sunny afternoon during a block party organized by the HOA to reinforce community spirit. Laughter, music, and the smell of barbecue filled the air, creating a light-hearted atmosphere that masked the underlying tension in our neighborhood. While Rachel helped set up tables and decor, her attention was drawn to a familiar sight, the so-called Neighborhood Watch group, conspicuously lined up near the driveway. Clad in their matching polo shirts, armed with clipboards, they looked more like a law enforcement agency than engaged neighbors. The incident began when Rachel playfully decided to temporarily rearrange some decorative planters for aesthetic reasons and unknowingly sparked a storm. One of the self-appointed enforcers, fondly dubbed Captain Compliance by residents for his passion for rules, noticed Rachel's adjustments. With an affronted huff, he marched over, clipboard in hand, followed closely by two of his equally zealous sidekicks. "Excuse me, ma'am," he called out with an overly authoritative tone as he neared her. "You're in violation of Section 5.3 of the Neighborhood Guidelines regarding landscaping alterations without prior approval." The words dripped with ego as he waved his clipboard as if it was an official document backed by law. A bemused Rachel raised an eyebrow and glanced at the cheerful decorations she'd adorned to elevate spirits, hardly offenses deserving of such scrutiny. "I'm just trying to enhance our little gathering," she explained with a disarming smile, hoping to diffuse the situation. But Captain Compliance wasn't having it, he continued. "We take these violations seriously." The surrounding partygoers fell silent, sensing an impending confrontation. To them, this drama unfolded like an absurd spectacle, yet Rachel's demeanor remained poised even as whispers circled through the crowd. Suddenly, without warning or sufficient justification, they proclaimed her under arrest. "You must come with us for questioning," one of the sidekicks insisted sternly while others smirked behind their clipboards. The gravity of their actions seemed comical given how worked up they were over ornamental plants, a triviality compared to what Rachel had faced in her real line of work. As she took a deep breath and maintained eye contact with her makeshift accusers, Rachel realized this could be more than just a petty confrontation. This was her moment, a test of wits against those who believed themselves superior. Little did they know that confronting her was far more dangerous than tussling with flower arrangements in the backyard. The self-appointed enforcers of the neighborhood, known informally as the Neighborhood Watch, were a curious mix of individuals united by a shared obsession with order and control. At the forefront was Captain Compliance, whose real name was Harold Jenkins. An accountant by profession, Harold had always been meticulous to a fault. As he transitioned into retirement, he found meaning in imposing structure on what he viewed as a chaotic world, starting right in our picturesque community. With Harold were his devoted accomplices, Susan, a stay-at-home mom with an insatiable need for camaraderie and validation, and Gary, a retired police officer who relished any chance to don a uniform-like polo shirt again. Together, they formed a bizarre triad that gained popularity among certain residents while simultaneously sparking resentment in others. Their motivations were multifaceted. They craved power and recognition that came from being perceived as protectors of the neighborhood. This gave them a sense of purpose and identity that their previous lives lacked. Interactions with other residents fluctuated between comical misunderstandings and outright confrontations. Some neighbors enjoyed their antics, treating them like characters from a sitcom, while others felt suffocated by their overreaching authority. For instance, Mrs. Adams, who had once been reprimanded for keeping her Christmas decorations up too long, became an outspoken critic of the so-called enforcers, her grievances echoing in whispered conversations at local gatherings. However, it was the interactions with those outside their inner circle that often revealed more about their motivations. The trio frequently approached newcomers with unsolicited advice on adhering to HOA regulations, seeking to establish dominance in the social hierarchy. This approach backfired more often than not. Many residents felt marginalized or belittled, further deepening the rift within the community. As tensions mounted thanks to Rachel's unexpected confrontation, it became apparent that the fake cops were not just clinging to an illusion of superiority, they were desperately fighting against feelings of inadequacy in a world they could not control. It was this fragile emotional state that fueled their increasingly reckless behavior, leading them to presume authority over someone like Rachel without realizing who they were truly dealing with. The impending clash would pit their misguided zeal against her calm resolve, creating a perfect storm poised to shatter the facade of order they had constructed. As Rachel stood there, facing the trio of faux authority figures, a wave of amusement washed over her, though she masked it beneath a facade of calm. The humor of the situation dawned on her. Here she was, a trained CIA agent, being arrested for reorienting a few flowerpots to enhance the aesthetics of a neighborhood block party. Her internal chuckle contrasted sharply with the tension hanging in the air, marked by the incredulous gazes of onlookers nearby. "What's next?" she quipped with a lightness that caught even her own surprise. "Am I going to be charged with indecent plant positioning?" She tilted her head, looking at Captain Compliance as if he were an amicable but misguided neighbor rather than a self-appointed enforcer. This momentary levity played into her strengths. It was how she navigated both the mundane and the extraordinary, through humor and quick thinking. Yet, beneath that playful demeanor lay a simmering tension. She evaluated their body language and the absurdity of their claims, knowing full well that they were out of their depth. Captain Compliance blustered on about violations and regulations, but Rachel's mind raced through protocols and strategies learned in the field. You do realize, she continued, maintaining her playful tone, that any good security detail would suggest focusing on real threats rather than decorative ones? Her defiance surprised those around her. The whispers faded into silence, replaced by curious glances among neighbors who had watched enough sitcoms to appreciate this unexpected turn of events. Tension twisted into something more palpable. Rachel could feel it in her bones that this was a turning point. The make-believe enforcers seemed momentarily thrown off balance by the abrupt shift from fear to humor. In the face of such audacity, they faltered slightly, stammering under the weight of her gaze. Here was someone they decided to confront without fully understanding who she was, a woman capable of dismantling their pretentious bravado with a mere smile and a clever quip. Rachel realized this was not merely about flowers or HOA bylaws, it was an opportunity to reclaim power in her own way, using subtlety over force. Underneath the absurdity of the situation simmered an exhilarating thrill. As serious as things appeared, she was not only equipped to handle these implications but to outmaneuver them entirely, a delicate dance between her normal existence and the extraordinary skill she possessed. As Rachel stood defiantly in front of the trio of faux enforcers, her mind shifted gears from amusement to strategy. The absurdity of the situation presented an unexpected opportunity for her to leverage her CIA training. She recognized that this encounter could serve as more than just a confrontation. It was a chance to gather intelligence on the motivations and dynamics driving the fake HOA enforcement, all while maintaining her cover as the unsuspecting neighbor. Drawing on years of experience in analysis and observation, Rachel began to assess the personalities before her. Captain Compliance, with his bluster and bravado, was clearly the leader, while Susan and Gary followed his lead, eager for approval. Each displayed their own insecurities that informed their actions. Harold's need for order stemmed from a desire to fill a void left by retirement, while Susan's need for validation made her cling to Harold's authority like a lifeline. "Tell me," she said casually, playing up her demeanor as an amiable resident. "What exactly does your neighborhood watch entail? I mean, aside from enforcing rules about flower arrangements?" Her light-hearted banter masked the sharpness of her inquiries as she studied their reactions. The slight hesitation in Harold's voice was telling. He lacked confidence when questioned directly. As they responded defensively, Rachel nudged deeper into their motivations. "It must be tough keeping everyone in line," she continued, feigning concern for their workload. "Do you ever feel like maybe people just want to enjoy their homes without worrying about regulations?" This approach allowed her to gauge how they perceived their roles and whether they understood the broader impact of their actions on community harmony or if they were simply caught up in self-importance. While they spoke, she discreetly observed not just what they said but how they behaved, body language, eye contact, even subtle shifts in posture. This information would be invaluable later. It provided insight into their collective psyche and vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Rachel's playful facade maintained the appearance of a simple neighbor caught in a petty dispute while simultaneously dissecting the fragile egos before her. Each word exchanged was part of a delicate negotiation. She was gathering ammunition for when she would need to confront them more decisively. In that moment, Rachel transformed the situation from a threat into an intelligence-gathering mission. The turning point was no longer about defending herself against absurd accusations but instead about understanding the very fabric of this makeshift authority, an opportunity for strategic advantage that only someone with her unique skill set could seize effectively. As Rachel continued to engage with the self-appointed enforcers, her covert investigation began to yield surprising insights. The power dynamics in their small group were more tangled than she had initially suspected, revealing connections that reached beyond the characteristically serene confines of our neighborhood. One afternoon, while feigning interest in their constant monitoring of residents, she learned that Captain Compliance, Harold Jenkins, had once been part of a local committee aimed at reforming community policies. His abrupt departure from that committee seemed tied to fiery disputes over his rigid approach. Drawing upon her keen observational skills, Rachel noticed how Harold would often glance nervously before responding to her inquiries, indicating a deeper insecurity lurking beneath his blustery persona. Intrigued, she delved further into his background and found out that he had aspirations for local office, which seemed to fuel his overzealous enforcement tactics. The desire for recognition and power wasn't just about maintaining order, it was fueled by unfulfilled ambitions. Meanwhile, Susan, desperate to fit in with Harold's vision, often referenced her late husband's long-standing influence in the community, a foundation on which she built her own self-worth. Rachel discovered that Susan had made several friends within the HOA who had distanced themselves after becoming uncomfortable with Harold's extreme measures. It became clear that Susan had transformed her need for validation into support for a leader whose authority came from intimidation rather than genuine respect. As tension rose in the community due to escalating conflicts and discontent among residents, Rachel realized that Gary, the retired police officer, had his own turbulent history. Sifting through local rumors and gossip, she learned he had faced disciplinary action during his time on the force for using excessive force, a situation buried beneath layers of bureaucratic cover-up and community loyalty. This revelation underscored why he clung so tightly to Harold's regime. It granted him a semblance of control he had lost. With each discovery, Rachel was piecing together a web of insecurities and motivations that kept these impostors united in their misguided authority. Their pursuit for status within an increasingly authoritarian structure exposed them as far more vulnerable than they portrayed. She mentally cataloged this information as valuable leverage against them. She could exploit their weaknesses while subtly exposing their disconnect from reality. Armed with these newfound insights, Rachel determined that any confrontation would need to be carefully orchestrated. This newfound intelligence not only provided her with potential strategies but also added an exhilarating layer to her plan. She wasn't merely defending herself, she was readying for a strategic counterattack that could change the very fabric of neighborhood dynamics forever. The day of the long-anticipated confrontation arrived, and Rachel had meticulously planned her approach. The evening's neighborhood meeting was scheduled at the community center, ostensibly to discuss ongoing HOA issues, but Rachel knew it would serve as a perfect stage for the showdown she had orchestrated. Armed with intelligence on the enforcer's vulnerabilities and backed by the quiet support of disenchanted neighbors, she felt a surge of determination. As residents trickled into the center, Rachel took her place in the audience, feigning a calm demeanor while mentally preparing herself. Captain Compliance opened the meeting, pompously reiterating his authority and presenting complaints like trophies. Rachel could see the tension ripple through the crowd. Many were struggling with feelings of frustration and inadequacy under his rule. It was her moment to act. "Excuse me, Harold," she interjected, letting enough confidence seep into her voice to draw attention. "Can we actually address the elephant in the room?" Startled, he paused mid-sentence. "What do you mean?" His bravado flickered as uncertainty danced in his eyes. "It's not the flowerpot that disturbs our beautiful neighborhood," she began, her tone both discerning and lighthearted. "It's the obsessive enforcement of arbitrary rules meant to maintain an illusion of control." She turned slightly to include Susan and Gary. "And honestly, it's time we acknowledge that your reign of errors stems from your own insecurities." The audience murmured, surprised by her audacity but charged with a sense of hope. With each statement, Rachel expertly wielded her knowledge of Harold's ambition and Susan's validation needs as daggers aimed at their egos. "Those excessively stringent rules may have kept people in check temporarily," she continued, "but they've also stifled our sense of community. Surely we can do better." Sensing resistance melting away among neighbors and recognizing her mastery of the moment, she escalated her rhetoric. "This isn't about whether I moved some flowers. It's about recreating a space where everyone can breathe freely, a neighborhood rooted in camaraderie rather than compliance." The shift in energy was palpable. Neighbors began exchanging glances filled with understanding and solidarity. With newfound courage spilling over them, a few even echoed Rachel's sentiments, sparking spontaneous applause. Under pressure from the collective voice of dissent, Harold faltered, seeking refuge in bluster too thin to cloak his insecurities. What began as a simple challenge morphed into a blockade against his misguided authority. In that moment, Rachel didn't just defeat Harold in argument, she dismantled his fiction of control, rallying support for restoring true leadership back to the community, decisions made not from an illusion of power but from genuine concern for all residents. By exposing their fragile authority while fostering courage among neighbors, peace bloomed again in the community, a testament to Rachel's tactical brilliance and unyielding spirit. In the aftermath of Rachel's confrontation with the neighborhood watch, the dynamic of our neighborhood shifted dramatically. Residents who had previously felt silenced began to voice their opinions and concerns openly, united by a newfound sense of empowerment. Conversations blossomed in yards and around mailboxes, where neighbors who had been divided by fear now shared laughter and ideas for community improvement. The oppressive atmosphere that Captain Compliance and his followers had cultivated began to dissipate, replaced by a palpable camaraderie. As the dust settled on the tumultuous meeting, Rachel found herself at the center of this change. Neighbors approached her with gratitude, expressing how her boldness had inspired them to reclaim their voices. What had begun as a petty dispute over flowerpots had sparked a movement toward genuine community involvement, with many residents eager to collaborate on projects that would rebuild trust and cooperation among neighbors. However, this newfound authority brought a complexity to Rachel's own life. While she reveled in the support of her neighbors, she also had to navigate the implications of her dual identity. Her husband, who had been unaware of her CIA background until now, was both proud and concerned. He admired her courage but worried about what it meant for their family's safety. Conversations between them became more profound and layered. They discussed not only community dynamics but also the broader implications of her work as an agent. Rachel felt a mix of relief and anxiety. While the neighborhood embraced her as a leader, she was still living under the shadow of her secret life. The prospect of blending her roles as a community figure and a CIA agent posed challenges that weighed heavily on her mind. It was imperative to strike a balance between the ordinary life she cherished with her husband and the extraordinary responsibilities tied to her covert work. Moreover, as Rachel observed how perceptions of authority shifted among residents, transforming from fear of self-appointed enforcers to respect for collective decisions, she realized that trust in genuine leadership could lead to greater accountability across the board. The incident served as a reminder that true power lies not in imposing rules but in fostering relationships built on mutual respect and understanding. As Rachel stepped into this new chapter alongside her husband, she felt invigorated by the possibility of using both her skills and community support to create lasting change. The road ahead promised challenges, but with unity among neighbors and an unwavering commitment to authenticity, she believed they could reshape not just their neighborhood but perhaps even redefine what it meant to be part of a community in today's world. As Rachel settled into her new role within the community, she found herself reflecting on the intricate themes of identity, deception, and belonging that had woven through her recent experiences. Her life had become a tapestry of contrasting narratives, an ordinary neighbor engaged in everyday life while simultaneously carrying the weight of a CIA agent. This duality brought both challenges and insights. She realized that many people grapple with similar dichotomies, navigating their own worlds of expectation and reality. The confrontation with the neighborhood watch had catalyzed not only a shift in neighborhood dynamics but also a deeper understanding of what it meant to belong. Rachel recognized that the members of her community, much like herself, often wore masks, whether to fit in, seek approval, or protect their vulnerabilities. It was a poignant reminder that even in seemingly mundane settings, extraordinary situations could unfold, revealing hidden strengths and unexpected alliances. As conversations blossomed among neighbors, they began to embrace authenticity over conformity. Rachel saw people drop their facades as they shared their own stories of hardship and resilience. The power of community emerged as they collectively dismantled the remnants of fear instilled by self-appointed enforcers, reclaiming their right to voice opinions and make decisions collaboratively. In this newfound camaraderie, Rachel found hope. It suggested that true strength lies not in authority but in mutual respect and understanding. Yet, amidst this collective awakening, Rachel's internal conflict persisted. Balancing her public identity with her covert life remained a tightrope walk fraught with risks. Each day brought new dilemmas: how to engage in community building while simultaneously protecting her family from the potential fallout of her secret work. The stakes were high, but so too was her resolve to navigate these complexities. Looking ahead, Rachel envisioned future adventures filled with the promise of more significant challenges. She felt invigorated by the possibilities of applying her skills not just in moments of crisis but in fostering deep connections within her neighborhood. Whether it was organizing community events or addressing emerging issues together, she knew that her role could extend beyond mere participation to meaningful leadership. As she walked through the revitalized neighborhood, Rachel felt a sense of belonging that transcended her role as a CIA agent. The journey toward authenticity was ongoing, and she understood that it would require courage and vulnerability to maintain both her identities. With each step forward, she prepared not only for the challenges ahead but also for the chance to reshape the very fabric of her community, a place where ordinary citizens could rise to meet extraordinary circumstances together.